So we've got all kinds of stuff going on now, stuff planned for the future. What I want to explore next is, so what does stewardship have to do with any of this?
Yeah.
Let's explore what we've talked about so far, what we have done. We started with talking about vision, how it started out of a council meeting, and how remarkably, because I don't know that I've ever seen committees work like this, there was a common thread through every breakout team.
Yep.
And if you go over that again, nourishment?
So the visible community church faithfully nourishing all in Jesus Christ.
And those key words were in every team.
Yeah.
We talked about the Bold Food Pantry and how that is probably one of the most visible ministries of the church right now to the community, and how needed it is, unfortunately, in these times. And then how media and communications, how we've changed and adapted to keep serving you and keep giving you that sense of community and belonging, because this is an important community. And I think that pretty much
That's it.
gives that. So let's get into stewardship then. And the bottom line is, stewardship made all that possible in the first place, right? One important question, stewardship's kind of a buzz term. What does stewardship actually mean?
I'll put that one over that direction there.
So the essence of it is that all that we have doesn't really belong to us, right? If you listen to my sermons, I sometimes say, we do not belong to ourselves. And that goes to everything we have, our money, our time, the various ways we're talented, all those things, they're not ours. The Bible says that we are stewards, we care for something that doesn't belong to us. And then we're supposed to treat it that way, so when it comes to money, we're supposed to treat our money like it doesn't really belong to us. It was a gift given by God, and we're supposed to treat it that way. Yep.
And if I can jump in on that a little bit, I like history lessons. A lot of people don't. And one of them is where we came from this year based on last year in stewardship for all seasons. We had our first real stewardship campaign in I don't know how many years, really, I think since Doreen and I have been here. And we had a very aggressive goal. We didn't quite get there, but we did very, very well, thanks to the generosity of the congregation and people looking in amongst themselves and praying about what we might be able to do, and it worked out very well. We're starting a stewardship campaign again, and we meant to stay in touch more for the year. We were not able to do that. However, there are some things going to be happening soon to kind of follow up and see where we go from next year. One thing I want to point out from dealing with the stewardship and finance committees, when that pandemic hit, we were certainly scared. What's going to happen financially? What can people do? Will they be able to step up? And there was a couple of scary weeks thrown in there. I know Charlie was sweating for a good while there. But then guess what? The congregation responded. And we have pretty much kept on where we promised we would last year for all of our pledges. And I think that's great. Going forward for this year, unfortunately, I'm absolutely sure that there are some people that are going to look as deep as they can and say, I can't do it this year. I've lost a job or something's going on. And so other people may be able to look within themselves and say, maybe I can do just a little bit more. And that's kind of what we're going to be talking about over the next couple of weeks and over the next month till we get to Generosity Sunday on the 1st of November.
What is Generosity Sunday?
So Generosity Sunday is going to be our day where we hand in our pledge card, where we hand in how much we're willing to give for the year. It's also conveniently All Saints Day, and I think the theme actually fits pretty well, matching the saints who have gone before us, because that's what All Saints is about. And if we think about the saints who have gone before us in this place and how much their generosity has gotten us to this point, and then we're going to think about our future, where we're going over this next year. And so that's going to be 1st of November.
And one of the nuts and bolts, I would say one of the nuts and bolts from last year was the fact that we got enough pledge cards that we could create a good solid budget, which we've more or less been able to adhere to for this year. So those pledge cards have two vital purposes. The first is so that the Finance Committee and the Council can try to give us an idea of what next year will look like. And it's very important to have an understanding. And a little birdie told me that we do actually have a pledge which says if we get 67 pledge cards or statements of intents, someone's going to throw in some money, and the number I heard is $500. Yeah. So the pressure is on. Turn those pledge cards in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, absolutely. And so, right. So if you can turn in those pledge cards, I mean, and I get it as a person who, like from school age, never turned in his homework, just hates doing it. I really do. And so I get how it can be annoying, but if you can turn in those pledge cards, one, we get that $500 gift, and two, it helps us plan for the next year. Mm-hmm. It really does. Even if you're saying, I'm not giving more,
right?
Even if you're saying I'm giving less, like turn in the pledge card because it still counts and it helps us. It really does.
And you don't have to be here in person, right? All this applies to the online community as well.
Yep. So if you're joining us online, there's a link to a form at relc.org. Okay. You can fill this out online just as well as you can fill it out in person here. We have physical copies. We'll have them available if you want to pick them up. If you want them mailed to you, we can certainly mail it to you. But if you're joining us online, we've been trying real hard. It's been one of actually our primary goals through the whole thing is make you feel like you're a part of the community as much as everybody else is who's here physically. That's why we added Dan in. That's why we're doing Q&A now. It's to make the online community and the physical community one. And so in my opinion, you're just as much with us as anybody else is.
Yeah, the RELC community is here.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
And whether it's you're viewing this online or
Mm-hmm.
in person. And I wanted to make sure too people understood if you have any questions, if you're not getting emails like the newsletter, any kind of online notification, if you're not receiving those, get in touch because we can add you to the list, make sure we have your email address. Mm-hmm. And that isn't just for online virtual stuff. If you're not getting physical mailings, contact the church, give us a phone call, or email office@relc.org, and we'll make sure you're on the physical mailing list as well. A lot of people have this misunderstanding that to donate to a cause, whether it's a church or a nonprofit, I don't know, even a government agency, whatever you're trying to help, you have to be rich. You have to donate a lot of money. Mm-hmm. That is not true. Mm-hmm. And I don't know which of you might have a better perspective on that, but how every little bit helps with the overall picture.
There's this previous guy at my church, and he was clinically out of it. He never had a job. He had a lot of mental difficulties, and so he would kind of just wander the streets most days. But every Sunday, he would walk in. He always walked in at 9:30, which was dead middle of my adult education class. And he would hand me just a handful of quarters. And it was just change that he had kind of found walking the streets. It was really all it was. And it's that, as much as it is anything else. He wanted to be very clear. That was his offering that day, and that's as much a part of it as anything else is.
Marty, did you have anything?
Well, and I would say that there are other times where we can look at what we have and figure out if there's a way to give it to the church that does many different things and takes care of many different things. And just one little sample, and part of this has to do in my career of dealing with people and how best to give money or do what we want, is there's been some tax law changes, and one of them says they doubled the standard deduction. So most people are realizing, okay, I'm going to give what I can to the church and I'm happy to do it, but I really don't get that quote tax advantage anymore. But there is a very special way, one particular way for people that are now above the age of 70, and that's something called a qualified charitable deduction. People don't understand that. If they're going to make a pledge to the church, great. But if they have to take some money out of their IRA, and then there's a very special way to do it. If it goes from your IRA directly to the church, you do get an extra deduction for that, even if you've taken the standard deduction. It's called a qualifying charitable deduction, and there are ways that we can help you give more if you wish, and maybe stiff the government just a little bit too, which I don't always have an issue with,
Marty, we've mentioned a couple times about, you know, my past history with other nonprofits. One of the things we used to do was had something called the set it and forget it donation. And that's because it can be so easy where at the beginning of the year you start off with, say, a monthly donation, a monthly pledge, and then you get distracted.
Right.
Life happens, it falls off the map, off your radar. Are there ways that you can help? You know, so the equivalent of our set it and forget it, where it's this automated system. Does RELC have anything like that?
Yes, we do have something, it's called Tithely, where you can set it up so that on a given day of the month or week, however you want to set it up, money will come out directly from your checking account or other accounts, I guess. And I will say that speaks directly to Doreen and me, because we were absolutely in that boat. We would make our pledge, we would be gone for a couple weeks, and every Sunday Doreen would go to the little envelopes there. We're 3 behind, how many do you want us to pay this week? We'll pay 2, we'll catch up next week. Then by the end of the year, we're 4, 5, or 6 behind, and the money was coming in lumps and fits and starts to the church. I've talked with Charlie for years, and finally I said, we're gonna do it. And just this past year with the last stewardship campaign, Doreen and I set up our monthly pledge to come out on the first of the month. I get a wonderful email every month, thank you for using Tithely. It's like, oh yeah, I gotta remember to make note of that.
Yeah.
But what that's freed us up to do is when there is maybe a special offering that can be done. Nate, with his Eagle Scout thing a week or so ago,
Yeah.
it's like we can throw an extra $50 in because that's on cruise control.
You never know.
And I you know, I'll be honest, as pastor, I'm in the same boat, you know. I mean, and I'm, you know, youngest generation here at the moment. So you want to know how many times I actually use a checkbook in my life? You know,
This many?
yeah, well, it used to be the only real reason was for church. You know, honestly,
Yeah.
I mean, that was really the only thing I used it for. But it was, and Doreen was better than I was, you know, because I didn't have them all pre-written out in an envelope. And so I think, oh gosh, I'm 4 behind now. Now I need to write this gigantic sum, and sometimes my finances fit that, and sometimes it didn't, you know. And so it really is really good, you know, even just as a pastor who gives, you know, that it's allowed me to be far more disciplined about giving than I ever was. And I think that's important.
Well, and I will also add that from many years ago being on finance committees, is when money is flowing in continually, constantly, in a way that you can count on it, boy, it sure helps the budgeting process too.
Any advice on anything that we've talked about so far?
No, just stay engaged.
Quick Bible lesson, I think, you know, and so, you know, there is the question, why should we be talking about giving more, especially during this time, right? You know, why, because we're asking for more, because we've got big plans. And so why are we talking about that, though, when there's all this stuff going on out in the world, it's chaos out there? Why give more? You know, and I wrote this in my newsletter in October, but there's this piece in the book of Genesis where it describes where during the famine, all the people they're freaked out because it's a famine and there's not enough food. And it describes this process, how in Egypt, everybody gradually sells themselves into slavery because they're afraid there's not enough. You know, now there is enough, there's actually enough, but gradually they sell their homes and then their land and their cattle, and then finally themselves, and they willingly say it. They say, please take our bodies, you know, and give us food in exchange. Pharaoh takes the deal. Contrast this with how God provides for the people when they're finally free, you know, and what happens is God provides in the wilderness, and it says every man had just enough, you know, and God abundantly provides. And so I think we need to remember that story, you know, in Genesis, it's chapter 47, you know, from Genesis 47 to Exodus chapter 16, that the reason we ask for more in times like this is because God actually does provide enough, you know. And when we live into scarcity, when we live into where the fear of there's not enough, Well, down that way lies slavery, and it lies bondage, to all sorts of things. And so if we want to live as the free people of God, we live into the belief that there is actually enough.
And you may still have questions about where am I seeing abundance in my life?
Yeah.
Or you have questions about, I know I've got means, I know I have enough, but how do I most effectively use what I have to aid the church and the community? We're here to answer your questions. Like we mentioned, email office@relc.org. We'll route it to whoever needs to talk to you. Pastor can talk to you. Marty will talk to you. Any other comments you'd like to have before we wrap up?
I don't think so.
All right. Well, then thanks very much for being here, answering the questions, clarifying things. I hope it clarified issues for you, and that you will see it in your heart to help make a true difference in making the vision of RELC happen. Thanks.
Thanks.